Fury versus Usyk, going out to Jack Roberts. Thank you for your request and thank you for participating in the channel. To tell you the truth, Fury versus Usyk seems to be the talk of the town, and it should be the talk of the town. And to be honest with you, these guys should be in negotiations right now to make this fight. This is the biggest heavyweight showdown that can be made today. Just let me say, in my opinion, and at this point, there's no one else for Fury. And at this point, there's no one else for Usyk. And so why not? Just make the fight. There's no reason why these guys shouldn't be in negotiations right now. It's a fight that the fans want to see, and it's the fight that makes the most sense. So to not make this fight is an injustice, not only to the fans, but it's an injustice to the sport. Just make the fight. Even if the fight is about 6 months from now, that's too long, but it's better than nothing. Just make the fight. It's one of those fights where it doesn't matter who wins, but these two just need to fight. What I love about this fight is both of these guys are awkward fighters, awkward heavyweights. I consider all southpaws awkward, but Fury himself is awkward. And Fury, being the size that he is, having the footwork, the hand speed, the head movement, and just the speed and movement in general, makes him dangerous. But Usyk, of course, has the southpaw advantage. He has a lot of awkward movement, and he has a lot of awkward timing. Just based on those things that I mentioned alone. Do you see why this fight has to be made? And I'll be honest with you, I don't care about the politics. I don't care about who's getting paid, who's not getting paid. That's for the managers, the promoters, and the fighters to work out. I, as a fan, don't want to be bothered with that. You make the fight, I'll pay for it. That's the way it works. You deliver the product, I'll pay for the product. That's the way it works. Now let's get down to who wins this fight. Who takes it? Who has the advantage? Of course, Fury has the size advantage. I assume he has the strength advantage. No, I'm just going to say for sure. Fury has the strength advantage. And as I've already mentioned, for his size, the movement, the strength, the head movement, and the hand speed for his size makes him dangerous. And that's why Fury is undefeated. And he hasn't switch hit in a while, but that's one of the advantages he has. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him pull that out in a fight against Usyk. Whereas Usyk has perfect timing. Usyk has better head movement. And we can't ignore the southpaw advantage that Usyk has. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Who wins this fight? Every fighter has strengths and advantages, weaknesses, disadvantages, however you want to look at it. That's just the reality when you're putting two human beings against one another. So who will prevail? Whose fight is this? And I personally am going to have to go with Usyk. I feel that Usyk is the fresher of the two. Usyk seems to be more hungry. And Usyk seems to be that up-and-coming rising star. And so Usyk has everything to gain from this fight. Okay? He has everything to gain. So I'm going to have to go with Usyk based on the southpaw advantage, based on his confidence, based on his ability to pressure. And for a guy his size, he puts on intelligent pressure. And I truly think that he's going to throw Fury's timing off. And so honestly, I see Usyk having all the advantages in this fight. I mean, Fury is going to be Fury. He's going to use movement. He's going to use herky-jerky movement. He's going to use head movement. He's going to use his hand speed. But this fight comes down to timing. It comes down to Usyk's timing. And what I like about Usyk, he's a very patient fighter. His eyes are wide open. He sees everything that's coming and everything that's going on. And Usyk is an expert at timing. I mean, if you know anything about boxing and you see Usyk fight, very awkward fighter. I don't see Fury necessarily having the power to bother Usyk. I see Usyk going into this very confidently, as I mentioned, going into this very hungry. Whereas Fury has tasted some of that success, so I don't know if the hunger is going to be there for Fury. So I see Usyk winning a decision in this one. So those are my thoughts. This one's all Usyk, unanimous decision. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think, and I will see you on the next video. My favorite heavyweight fight from the 90s is Evander the Real Deal Holyfield versus Big George Foreman. What a tremendous fight. This fight is extremely underrated, and I love this fight because there are so many factors in play. At that time, Holyfield was undefeated. Evander Holyfield was just a machine. I never thought anyone would be able to beat him. Whereas George Foreman, he was an aging heavyweight. But I truly feel that George Foreman was at his best in this fight. And what amazed me about that fight is George Foreman being in his 40s, and he was able to give a young killer like Holyfield a fight. I mean, Foreman was truly competitive in this fight. Now, I saw the fight when it first aired, and I'm thinking, okay, great fight, a lot of action. The fight was competitive. But now looking back at it, with the wisdom that I have and with my understanding of boxing thus far, it's amazing how Big George Foreman was able to take all of those shots from Holyfield. And I always say that George Foreman was like a brick wall in that fight. I mean, Holyfield hit him with everything, including the kitchen sink. And Foreman just kept coming forward, imposing his will. Now, of course, Holyfield prevailed, and he won the fight. But Big George Foreman, at his age and at his size, was showing hand speed. He was bouncing up and down, showing good footwork. And George Foreman was bobbing and weaving and using good head movement. And so, I mean, this fight was almost supernatural. I mean, both of these guys were tough. Both of these guys were great. And both of these guys were determined. Now, of course, we expected nothing less than greatness from Holyfield, being that he was in his prime or considered to be in his prime at the time. I mean, he was just phenomenal. But, of course, people would have been questioning George Foreman at 42 or 43 at the time. And right now, I'm 43, and my body is changing. And I'm a little bit stiff. And the longer I sit, the stiffer I get. And so the fact that George Foreman, around my age at the time, was able to compete on that level, had the stamina, had the strength, had the endurance, the durability. I mean, Big George Foreman, that guy couldn't have been human. He could not have been human. Because he was giving as well as he was getting. But if Holyfield hit anybody else with those same shots that he was hitting Foreman with, it would have been night, lights out. But George Foreman was still standing. And I don't care how many times Evander Holyfield hit George Foreman. And at one point in the fight, Holyfield threw 1,000 punch, exaggeration, but 1,000 punch combination against Foreman. And almost landed every shot in that sequence. But Foreman was trying to block those shots. Foreman was taking those shots, and Foreman just kept coming. And I was amazed. And I was a young boy back then, about 12, 13, watching that fight. And I was entertained by the fight. but I didn't have the understanding of boxing back then that I do now. And there is no way someone Foreman's age should have been competing at that level, taking those shots, and he was landing shots of his own. I mean, Foreman was getting combinations in on Evander. I mean, Evander was getting tired during that fight because Foreman just kept coming at him. And the hand speed for someone Foreman's age at the time and for his size, I mean, it was just phenomenal. George Foreman actually showed speed in that fight. It's just amazing. I'm at a loss for words as to how George Foreman performed in that fight. It was just amazing. I mean, it was truly amazing. I mean, there's nothing else I can say about it. And so that's one of the heavyweight contests that should be talked about more, that should be mentioned more. And it should go down as one of the best fights in the history of boxing. Let me know what you think.